Now, to have a better understanding on this matter, we are joined from Washington, D.C. by Jon Danilowicz, who is non-resident, senior fellow at Atlantic Council and former deputy chief of mission in Dhaka. Thank you, sir, for joining us here on Asia One. Well, look, Dhaka has now formally expressed interest in joining with Sheikh Hasina, still in exile in India, and ties between Dhaka and Delhi already strained. Is this Tariq Rahman's government moving to counterbalance India, not just testing the waters?
Thanks for having me. What I think that Bangladesh's government is doing is putting in practice what it ran on during the campaign, which is a Bangladesh first foreign policy. In this, Bangladesh is looking to maintain good relations with countries around the world and is looking at ways in which it can best advance Bangladesh's interest. Now, I don't know if that means that Bangladesh will eventually join the Makkah Pact or not. Frankly, I'm not sure if Pakistan, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia are interested in expanding the grouping at this time. But what this shows is the willingness of the government of Bangladesh to look broadly at its interests, both its geopolitical, its geoeconomic, and its geostrategic interests. So with this in mind, Bangladesh has had numerous discussions with, on a bilateral basis with officials from Turkey, from Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan. So my assumption is going forward that Bangladesh is open to hearing more from these countries about what's intended with the Makkah Pact and is interested in exploring opportunities, just as Bangladesh recently agreed to participate in maritime collective self-defense arrangements being organized by Saudi Arabia.
And look, while the Makkah Pact is drawing NATO Article 5 comparisons, given the disparity in member militaries and command structures, is this real deterrent or a mostly political signaling at this stage? What's your take on this?
Right, so the principles of individual and collective self-defense are enshrined in the UN Charter. Alliances such as NATO or the new Makkah Pact are fully consistent with this. And as you mentioned, these are primarily defensive in nature. They're meant to promote collective security, to deter war, and to preserve the peace. There are obligations that the treaty members take on. In the case of NATO, Article 5's provision that an attack on one is considered an attack on all. But again, if we look at NATO, NATO has only invoked Article 5 once after the September 11, 2001 attack on the United States. Much of the cooperation between NATO members happens outside of military action per se. These are not aggressive alliances meant to pursue war. They're meant to promote collective self-defense. And even in the event, like after 9/11, of an alliance invoking Article 5, each country is free to follow its own sovereign decision-making structures and to provide that assistance which is most beneficial to the alliance partner under threat. So I think in this regard, it took us 80 years almost for NATO to get to the point where it is now. The Makkah Pact is in its infancy. A lot of those command and control structures, the consultation structures, are still being worked out, I'm sure. But as you mentioned in your intro, each of the parties brings something to the table. Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Pakistan all have great geostrategic importance. They bring important military, economic, and diplomatic potential to the table. So I think there's a lot of potential for this alliance to meaningfully advance and to achieve its goals of promoting peace and security in the region and beyond.
And Mr. Danilowicz, President Trump has publicly endorsed the pact. Does that signal Washington sees it as a reinforcing U.S.-aligned security architecture?
So Trump and his administration have talked a lot about the importance of burden sharing. They've also identified U.S. interests in the Asia-Pacific as signally important going forward. Now, in recent times, obviously, a lot of energy and effort has been devoted to the Middle East, but I think the Trump administration has signaled that it wants to see regional states take more responsibility for security in their own regions, whether that be in the European theater with our NATO and European allies, whether it be in the Middle East or other parts of the world. So I think it was an important signal from the Trump administration and from the president himself to warmly welcome this pact. He has had numerous contacts and discussions with the leaders of these countries. I'm sure there are some in the United States and elsewhere who have questions about what the implications are of this for others. And I think going forward, both for the states themselves and for their allies, It's important that there be communication, open communication with potential adversaries and with other partners to make clear what's intended by the foundation of this new agreement.
Well, and look now, in New Delhi was already uneasy about Bangladesh even considering this move, but now Dhaka has formally moved, expressing this all. And do you think this risk could be turning South Asia into competing security camps?
Well, in my view, New Delhi has not yet come to grips with the fundamental changes that have taken place in Bangladesh over the past 2 years since the fall of Sheikh Hasina's government. Both during the interim government period and since Tariq Rahman's government was elected in February, the Indians have talked about a reset, but what they really haven't come to grips with is the desire by the Bangladeshi people and by Bangladesh's government to take a fresh look at its relationships and to pursue what's in Bangladesh's best interest. So there's been a lot of talk from India critical of this, just as there's been talk critical of Bangladesh's outreach to others, including Prime Minister Tariq Rahman's visit to China. I think the Prime Minister and representatives of his government have spoken eloquently about their desire to pursue Bangladesh's best interests and to look to partners around the world. That's not to say that India isn't important to Bangladesh. Of course it is, just by virtue of history, geography, and the degree to which their economies are tied together. But if anyone in New Delhi thinks that they exercise a veto over Bangladesh's sovereign foreign policy decisions, then again, I think they're living in the past and not fully understanding and appreciating the fundamental changes that have taken place in Bangladesh over the past 2 years.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us here on Asia One.